It looked like almost feral animals. It was terrible.
So the official version of events is that an investigation was carried out, charges were laid, and a family was brought before the courts. And if we stop right there,
16 children, a filthy house, and a secret investigation. We're learning more about the Siders family in Ohio.
we have a clean procedural headline. Parents and grandparents charged with child endangering. But the recorded words of the family's attorney pull back the curtain on a very different reality, one where the line between law enforcement action and the criminalization of being poor becomes almost indistinguishable. Because the evidence presented in public doesn't just suggest neglect, it suggests a legal system that saw a messy house and decided to make an example of it. Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Nest Media. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. On the surface, the case is shocking.
Elizabeth Siders. They are facing 16 counts of child endangering, and Gary Jr.'s parents, Gary Siders Sr. and Christina Siders,
a rural Ohio home, 16 children.
Levy. It's been nearly a week since sheriff's deputies and state agents went into a home in rural Ohio to execute a search warrant.
A 12 by 12 room. A sheriff describing conditions as so bad that livestock are kept better.
Christina Siders are facing the same charges. The state's attorney general, the Vinton County prosecutor, and the sheriff described the conditions in the home as filthy.
But when you strip away the outrage and look at what is actually known versus what has been claimed, a very different picture begins to emerge.
Some of these children couldn't even speak. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking. This is very. It was terrible.
One that is less about child endangerment and more about poverty, perception, and the dramatic gulf between the official narrative and the actual legal reality. First, we have to address the discrepancy in the timeline. The narrative fed to the public is that of a family hiding in plain sight, moving from county to county to avoid scrutiny. Yet the attorney for Gary Siders Sr., Dorian Ball, points out a critical nuance. The state hasn't provided the evidence. At the time of the interview, Mr. Ball hadn't even been able to meet his client due to the holiday weekend. His defense isn't built on a denial of the conditions, but on the fact that the state has provided only a modicum of the evidence. This is where the narrative begins to crack.
We don't have all of the evidence. We don't have anything that's showing that these kids were locked in a basement or anything of that nature.
The prosecutor and the attorney general held press conferences painting a picture of absolute horror. They used words like feral and filthy to describe both the home and the children. But according to Mr. Ball, these statements were made without a foundation. He suggests that the Attorney General's description of the inside of the house was secondhand, noting that the AG was outside the home and didn't go inside. This is the irony amplification.
To be perfectly blunt, when I see a press conference where the state AG is making these hyperbolic, extravagant statements about what he saw, where the sheriff is talking about livestock, is just simply... It's beyond disingenuous, frankly. It appears to me, from what I understand, that these people are really just trying to criminalize poverty.
The highest law enforcement officers in the state were speaking with absolute certainty about evidence they had not personally verified. Let's anchor this visually.
Child endangering. It's been described as a really awful place where these children were being kept, a 12 by 12 room. The sheriff, I believe, said there were feces all around. There were flies on the kids.
Imagine a courtroom, but the scales of justice are replaced by a weighing scale. On one side, you have a single, very dirty sock. On the other, you have a family's entire future. That is the visual metaphor for this case. The state is attempting to use the weight of public disgust to tip the scales, while the attorney is arguing that the evidence on the scale is practically non-existent. Mr. Ball pushes back hard.
With Gary Siders Sr. on the phone.
Yeah, thanks. Again, thanks for having me. So, unfortunately, because of the holiday weekend...
stating that while the house may have been unkempt, it is not illegal for a home to be unkempt.
Because we're just seeing the photos that were taken, their press photos from the outside of the house. And obviously, it does look like it might be a little...
He says they have quite the burden to show what they have been describing.
You describe that the outside was certainly unkept or was, perhaps looking dirty. I think people can look at the pictures for themselves and see that, but it's not illegal for something to be dirty. It's not illegal for a home to be unkept.
Pictures of a place being dirty is not going to cut it. This is the moral refrain of the
You know,
case.
they have quite the burden, I think, to show what they have been describing in their various news conferences and press releases, etc. And I think having
It's not illegal to be poor. We hear it first in his critique of the overblown language, and we will hear it again as the details unfold. Then we have the issue of the children's literacy. Law enforcement claimed the children had never been to school, couldn't read, and that the oldest couldn't spell her name. But the internet did what it always does.
the kids who have been described as feral, been described as illiterate. It's my understanding that as the internet does what it does, it's come out that these older kids had social media pages, Facebook pages, Snapchat pages, which speaks to a couple of things. Number one, if they're so illiterate, how are they posting things online? Number two, if these are kids who are trapped in this
Family
place,
members came forward with evidence of social media posts from the older children. As Mr. Ball noted, if they're so illiterate, how are they posting things online? He points out a key detail: if these children were truly trapped or hidden away, they typically wouldn't have unrestricted internet access or social media. This creates a hard fact. Official claims of a feral, illiterate state were publicly contradicted by the existence of Facebook and Snapchat accounts. But the most critical part of this narrative is the ticking clock
how
moment.
are they able to have... Typically, when you see cases where people are trapped or they're not allowed to go do things freely, they're not given internet access. They're not given.
This is a family facing up to 16 counts of felony child endangerment, which could mean decades in prison. The highest stakes aren't just about the bond. They're about the entire basis of the search. The search warrant is sealed. The family's attorney doesn't know why the police were there.
But we don't have all of the evidence. We don't have anything that's showing that these kids were locked in a basement or anything of that nature. This is
He
not
states, I would also be very interested to see what this search warrant
The
said.
Sider's home.
Unfortunately, I don't. And as you sort of alluded to, it would seem pretty odd for a couple of misdemeanor counts of indecent exposure to generate the type of response that happened at this house.
I have a hard time believing. First of all, if all it was an arrest warrant, then none of this could have happened. So here we are, with the fate of a family hanging on a single question: is this justice? Or is this simply a legal system that saw a poor family and decided to use its full, terrifying power against them without a valid legal basis? It's not illegal to be poor, daughters. The prosecution's only public evidence at this point appears to be the condition of the home. But as the attorney argues, generational poverty, deeply embedded trauma, mental illness, and systemic failure don't necessarily constitute a crime. This is the parallel narrative: the idea that poverty is a disease that needs to be punished, rather than a condition that should be helped. Finally, we reach the unanswered question. The attorney's interview concluded with the mystery of the search warrant. He said, I would also be very interested to see what this search warrant said. What the basis for the search warrant was. Obviously there was more there. The court documents are sealed.
So obviously there was more there. I'm sure that I and all of my other colleagues who are representing the co-defendants will all be very interested to see what the basis for the search warrant was.
Mm-hmm.
But the law requires that to get a search warrant, an officer must provide probable cause. The question remains, what was the specific crime the police were investigating before they walked in? Was it truly the public indecency misdemeanor?
I would also be very interested to see what this search warrant said, what the basis for the search warrant was, how they were able to obtain such a search warrant, because I have a hard time believing, first of all, if all it was an arrest warrant, then none of this could have happened. Or
was there a parallel investigation that gave them permission to raid a home full of children?
Documents are sealed. Do you know anything about this parallel investigation that brought Ohio BCI and the Sheriff's Department to the Sider's home?
As we close, let's return to that final refraining Dastre. It's not illegal to be poor. The legal system is built to protect the innocent, but it also has a history of overwhelming the powerless. If a grand jury decides that dirty dishes and clutter amount to a felony, then every family struggling to make ends meet is just a child welfare visit away from a jail cell. Here is your call to research. The documents related to the search warrant in the Siders case are sealed, but the law allows for the public to petition the court to unseal records. Look up Vinton County, Ohio, case search, or the online docket for the Siders family. If the warrant is public, read the probable cause affidavit. Ask yourself this direct question: is, based on the known facts, Does the evidence supporting the arrest warrant for parallel investigation meet the standard of probable cause, or does it rely on the mere appearance of poverty to justify the raid? Type your answer in the comments below. If you found this breakdown of the justice system revealing, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Crime Nest Media, and turn on notifications. Because when the facts are sealed, we have to be the ones to ask the questions.